So let's continue our topic in Module 8. Today we will be discussing Chapter 36. It's Developmental Disabilities and Disorders. So this is very common in the workplace setting that you will be working, whether in a community setting, in a home setting of the client, in a facility or whatnot, because you will be dealing with clients who have developed or maybe disorders or maybe through old age. It depends, right? So these are most common for those age middle-aged one, for pediatric clients, those who have usually developmental disabilities. So again, when we talk about this chapter 6, it's a permanent impairment before the age of 18. So if it's a developmental disabilities before 18, usually it becomes permanent, right? If it's not managed. It usually due to illness, accidents, distress, diseases, genetic factors, or maybe you know unsupervised pregnancy. The mother is like over not taking care of well of her pregnancy that affects the baby inside the womb. That might be also a cause, and of course affects the three life skills. Of course, if terms of developmental disabilities, of course the self-care, the communication, the mobility, and the learning aspect of that individual, right? So those are considered the three life skills that might be affected, or four. In terms of developmental disability, again, the person's ability to do self-care, the person's ability to do communication, mobility, and also learning things. So what's the impact of individuals and family? So if you have a family member with developmental disabilities or any disorders, it might be lifelong support that usually you need to deal with, right? So if you have it, there might be some care. If you're living in Canada, there might be some caregiver that has been provided by the community, by the agency, or by the government for a few hours or so, depends on the on your family's condition. But it will still be the main caregiver should always be the family member, and it will have a lifelong support that needs to be required for you guys. So it might gonna change the your total lifestyle, right? And also it can also affect the independence of the individual. So as much as possible, if they are have developmental disability, we bring them to therapy so that they can be taught on how to do things on their own. If they can manage, they need to learn how to, like, say, sip, like, feed themselves, use the toilet as possible, etc. So those are the things, right? Sometimes in as a caregiver, if you are the main caregiver of the family, it can be burden for you. Sometimes it affects your emotional and financial aspect. It will drain you somehow, and that's really part of the process, right? So it's always good as a caregiver of the family that you need to have a break. You need to consult a counselor or a therapist for yourself as well, so that you know how to bring those stress or how to carry those stress, right? So it's very important because whether we like it or not, if you will have a family with this developmental disabilities and disorders, it might affect you as a person, and it might drain you too. So it's always good that you also need to seek help. So, what are the support workers' responsibilities? So, as a support worker for those developmental disorders, you need to follow what's always in the care plan and maintain safety for your clients and also for yourself. It's very important, right? You need to double check what is the care plan, what are the meals, what are the ADLs, what are the activities that needs to be done with the client. You need to follow that. And as I just mentioned in the previous chapter, that always promote DIPS. DIP stands for Dignity, Individualized Care and Independence, Privacy, Preference, and Safety, right? So that's very important. And make sure you encourage structured routines for the stability of your client and also with the other caregivers, so that you will be on the same page. And that way, the client will not get confused on what to do next. Because if you have a different way of giving care, and then the other caregiver has a different way of giving care, the client might get confused and might get irate, right? So it's very important that you will communicate with the other caregivers, and you work as a team. Teamwork is very important in the healthcare setting. So, what are the major developmental disabilities? Right? Examples or some common ones. So, we have ADHD, we have autism, we have cerebral palsy, we have Down syndrome, we have epilepsy, we have the FAST or the alcohol syndrome, we have intellectual disability and spina bifida. So we will go with them one by one and identify what are those. So four is the ADHD or the attention deficit hypersensitivity disorder. If yeah, so the key point, it's like the early onset affects 3 to 7% school aged children. So it all usually starts there in the school aged children. Sometimes children with ADHD, they have inattention, they have what you call this, low attention span. They have they are too hyper in terms of like doing some activities. They're also like very impulsive in terms of doing their work. So it's very important that you need to make sure that you will always, caregiver should always be there for them, right? So that's very important. Next will be, of course, for ADHD, the treatment includes, of course, there's a medication that needs the doctors to be prescribed, and then we have some behavior strategies. There might be some trainings for caregivers on how to deal with them, like if they start to be impulsive or they are starting to be hyper. So there might be training for that, right? So that's why we have, I think, if we're not mistaken, we have a new course now, which is the DSW, like developmental support workers. So they are more like focused on like this clients with this developmental disorders. Yeah. So next is autism spectrum disorder or the ASD. In this disorder, there's a challenges in the communication and interaction. They might have difficulty like eye contact, giving their information, trying to communicate with other people. So sometimes they have repetitive behaviors and routines. So that's why for them, it's always good that you always have a scheduled routine for them, and then it's always the same day, the same routine every day, right? So the therapies includes behavioral therapy, speech therapy, and sensory therapy. Next, we have the cerebral palsy. This is a disorder of muscle control due to brain injury. So we have a few types or three types of this. We have spastic, athetoid, and atasic. So I don't want to like explain that further because you don't really need to know those things. But yeah, but at least the most important thing here for cerebral palsy, you need to support them. You need to encourage independence for them. Um, you know you will also support them in terms of activities of daily living, the range of motion exercises, and also if they have therapy scheduled, you need to be there for them to assist them, right? Next will be Down syndrome. So if when we talk about Down syndrome, this means that it has an extra chromosome, causes by physical feature and then challenges. So there might be some different, very specific feature for Down syndrome, right? So I think it's very common for everyone. We can see some of those in the usually in the pediatric homes. There might be some Down syndrome client. So the risk for that, they might have some, like heart issues, they might have thyroid disorders, or early stage of dementia or early dementia. So basically, as a support worker, the things that you can do is, of course, to support them in their therapies, proper diet, and then exercises, right? Like balance exercise or range of motion exercises. What else? Next is epilepsy. When we talk about epilepsy, this is a recurrent seizure. It has no cure. It has something to do with brain injury as well. So the main goal here is making sure that you provide safety. That's the priority, especially in water activities, like if they're swimming in the pool or whatnot, or in the ocean. You need to make sure that you know when they are seizuring, right? So make sure you call EMS if seizure lasts for more than 5 minutes. You call the 911 if if the seizures last for 5 minutes. Sometimes there are obvious seizures, sometimes they are like not obvious seizures. So basically you need to know the background of your client and what are in their care plan and what are the expected seizures or different types of seizures that they may project, right? Again, that will always depends on the client's condition. Now we have the FASD or the fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. This is actually the cause. if the mother is drinking alcohol while they are pregnant, right? So this is a preventable disorder if if the mother is aware that that the child from or the baby in her womb might gonna get this disorder if he or if she will keep drinking. So the process here for a FSD, as a support worker, you need to guide or assist in terms of the learning therapies, behavioral therapies, or memory challenge, because they have some memory challenges or learning issues, right? Sorry, sometimes if for the FAST, they have like they're kind of slow in terms of learning. Their behavioral, they might be some like easily get annoyed, irritated, something like that. So and sometimes they are too shy as well, right? So it's always good for FASD that you will assist them in building their self esteem and consistency and their learning skills. All right, next is the intellectual disability. So when we talk about intellectual disability, it's below average function, and they might have a daily living challenges. So even like doing their ADLs, they have some difficulty learning them, right? So that is considered intellectual disability, right? So it kind of ranges from mild to severe, depends on the client condition. So as the PSW or as a healthcare worker, our focus is managing or assisting them into their daily skills, um, trying to include them in the community, like feeling inclusive, of course, and then a person directed planning, like specifically for them, right? So they should know how to communicate. Next is the spina bifida. So it's a neural tube defect through the spine, and it's not fully closed. So usually it has something to do with the spine that is not fully closed, or it's not being it doesn't progress the growth, right? So there might be different types also, the occulta, meningococele, myelomeningococele. So it might the effects of the spina bifida, it might have something to do with the mobility of the person, bladder issue or bowel issues, right? Depends on the client's condition. So sometimes they have like ostomy for their bowel movement and all that stuff. So depends. So again, those are some of the highlights. Those are some overview of each disorder that we need to know. For family and caregiver impact, of course, for family and caregiver, because I put this as one because sometimes the family are the main caregivers, to be honest, right? The caregivers or us, the PSW that visits the home, we are only secondaries, right? So sometimes it affects our emotional side. It affects our time because we need to give time and effort for our family members who needs our help. It actually gives us financial strain because of all the expenses that we need to do for our family member who have disorder. And of course, we need to support them and assist them through the respite and direct care. So respite care when they are almost like in the dying stage, and then during the direct care too, doing their ADLs, etc. We should be hands on as well, whether a family or a PSW, right? So those are some of the things, those are some of the impacts that might affect the family and caregivers in terms of having a family member with disabilities. But again, you need to be very positive. Good thing in Canada, we are being supported by government somehow, and it's really a good thing. So make sure the key themes or the key themes for practice, if you're taking care of this disorders or disability, make sure safety is number one priority. Second, dignity. Even the fact that they have these developmental disorders, even the fact they have like slow, or they cannot communicate, or they cannot think well, or whatever it's the condition is, make sure we maintain their dignity. Remember, it's part of the DIPS and it's number one of the DIPS process. Dignity and independence is always go together. We need to recommend and then teach them how to be independent somehow if they can able to do so. If their right hand is working, then let them use their right hand. If their left foot is standing, then let them use their left foot, etc. Right? So those things, and make sure there is consistency of the care that you're giving, and there is a structure like a routine, right? So it's always good that there is a routine to whatever you do, and consistency. When we say consistency, it should be the same every day. If there's a little bit of improvement, then it's better, but there should always be a reminder and consistency of the work that we do with them. And it's always good that there is a interdisciplinary teamwork, so we should work as a team, You work with the family, you work with the nurse, with the PSW, with the family doctor, with the physiotherapist, and all that stuff, right? So it's always good to work as a team, work together, collaborate together, because at the end of the day, we have one goal. We have one goal, but to support our client and provide a client-centered approach and that in the best way possible, right? So that's always there. All right. So that actually ends our chapter 36. So if you want to learn more about developmental disabilities and disorders, again, you can always go to your Elsevier 2022. It's on chapter 36. That's all for today. I'll see you again next time.